Joining us today are John Guttery, Ecolab Senior Vice President for Enterprise Initiatives, Meredith Englund, Ecolab Vice President of Water Partnerships, and Ruth Petram, Ecolab Senior Corporate Scientist for Food Safety and Public Health. So here we go. John, you are up first. We hear the name Ecolab quite often, but many may not be familiar with the company's reach and impact. Can you give us a brief overview of Ecolab and how you help companies and ultimately consumers?
Sure, Allison. Thanks so much. Thanks for hosting us. My colleagues and I are excited to be here, and we're hoping to have an interactive session, even though we're all working virtually. So please submit your questions and keep us on our toes. Just a few words about Ecolab to get started. We, as you mentioned, we operate in over 170 countries around the world. So we're truly a global company. We visit and serve over 3 million customer sites, and those customer sites are really operating throughout all aspects of food systems. So from farm all the way to fork, as you mentioned before. So we're offering solutions, providing customers with solutions around animal health, around clean, safe, healthy environments, helping customers provide consumers with safe food, access to clean water. Ultimately, we do all of this while guarding precious resources, sustainability, and helping our customers operate as efficiently and safely as possible.
Wonderful. All right. I believe the next question we have up is geared towards Ruth. Ruth, how has the food supply chain been affected by the pandemic?
Thanks, Allison, for the question. And as you stated early on, we know that COVID-19 is not transmitted by food, but it certainly has disrupted our food systems and really exacerbated safety and security challenges that are inevitable across this food supply chain. We've seen challenges in simply trying to prevent the spread of the virus in all of the food, or in many food manufacturing facilities. And we've also seen that production has had to shift from making lots and lots of products for food service establishments to increasing demands among consumers. We've also seen some challenges with the availability of labor as people have contracted the disease. And this has made it more difficult to make sure that the employees who are working are properly trained, because they may just be stepping in quickly to take someone's place. And then certainly we all as consumers have experienced a lot, you know, from restaurant closures to runs on certain staples at the grocery store. And we do know there have been food security challenges as well, partly due to the economic impacts on some people, but also just the logistics of trying to distribute food in different ways, leading, exacerbated by the fact that we're all supposed to be staying distant. So that does make it harder to transport things as well. So lots of impacts.
Thank you so much, Ruth. And that is a great segue to a follow-up question here for John. And that is, what has the Ecolab team learned during the pandemic, particularly when it comes to the food supply chain?
Well, the pandemic has probably opened our eyes even more than we anticipated, and like many of the people participating, maybe even more than we wanted. However, we have had several reinforcing insights in terms of what we've been doing as a company over recent years to help deal with situations like this and also help our customers through it. And I also think that we have been strongly reinforced in terms of the core strategy that we put in place to deal with the global pandemic. And that was anchored around keeping our employees safe, keeping our team members safe, because those team members are integral to our solutions for customers. We wanted to make sure that we were able to serve customers, which speaks to the supply chain and the value chain, which is core to this conversation. And we also wanted to prepare ourselves for post-pandemic to use this as an opportunity to get stronger as a company and be better for our customers. So I'll touch on a few things that we did learn. One, we have been investing intensely on digital capabilities. We have a unique business model that not only provides strong technical solutions for our customers and innovation around their application needs, but we also have a technically oriented sales and service team that is able to work with customers to train them to understand their problems, to help us innovate around their problems. And now with the advent of digital capabilities and the provision of service digitally, we were able to understand what was happening in customers' locations, whether it be food and beverage or otherwise in hospitality and food service, and make sure that we were able to provide the right solutions at the right time. And that innovation, that investment in digital capabilities is not only something that we needed to help customers with business continuity during the pandemic, but also something that we will need to be helping them recover from the pandemic and be increasingly efficient on the backside of all this. I would also say that we learned, as many did, through supply chain disruptions, that there are certain areas where we have to invest in capacity and invest in kind of strategic redundancy and flex capacity to be able to deal with different surges that are going to happen going forward. And that hit us hard, obviously, around sanitization, hygiene-related products, where raw materials were scarce, and perhaps the footprint of our manufacturing facilities was not perfectly in line with where the demand began and where it ended. So that was another learning, and that was good encouragement for us to move forward with investments we had planned anyway. Those are a couple things.
Wonderful. And I know there is a bit of a transition here. Digital technologies have become more and more important, especially as people are social distancing and not wanting to go into stores or not wanting to put themselves at risk. Can you guys talk a little bit about how you started to use more digital technologies to serve your customers? And this can be for you or Ruth. I know you both have great comments.
Yeah, I'll set the context, and I think Ruth probably has some really interesting examples for the audience. So in general, we want to be able to not only help customers identify potential disruptions and help them respond to them quickly. Ideally, we want to be able to anticipate those before they are disruptions and help our customers mitigate them in advance, maintaining operational efficiency, continuity, and the ability to serve their customers. So through Internet of Things, through virtual reality capabilities in terms of closing the loop and servicing the customers, there are many things that we have already in place and that we started deploying or taking full advantage of during the COVID pandemic when we were not able to access everything, or accessing things were restricted. So I think Ruth's got a pretty interesting example on a couple of those points. So I'll let her take it from here.
Thanks, John. Yeah, certainly we had to protect our own employees to make sure that they were not putting themselves at risk. So the advantage of being able to remotely get into our customers and really perform the same kinds of service that we would have performed in person via a computer hookup was something that we put a lot of emphasis on. And it allowed us, or our experts, to essentially see the situation that was going on and provide guidance to the customers, even though they were certainly many, many miles away. As an example, one of our customers did have an issue with listeria contamination in their food plant, and they turned to us to help find the source. And using technology and being able to coordinate with the team over several different states, our rep was able to visit the plant with other subject matter experts supporting him in the background, and they identified the source and issued a report and helped the customer with some remediation to get through that concern. We've also been able to use remote training. We have a platform called Lobster Inc., which provides specialized training, all virtual, in this area. And that has certainly increased in value to our customers as we can, again, provide very short bursts of training in areas that they really need to know. And then finally, we had many existing digital kinds of solutions, such as our 3D TRASAR system, which helps to keep food production systems online and operational 24/7. And certainly our ability to remotely monitor what's going on in those facilities to make sure that their sanitation and hygiene practices were being done properly certainly gave great assurance to the customer, but also when needed helped us to identify and correct issues as they arose, even though we could not be there in person. So lots and lots of different examples. Thanks.
Wonderful.
One
Thank you
quick
so
build
much,
there. Yeah, Allison, if I can make one quick build. I think that, and this is compliments and recognition to everyone that's participating, but we have also learned how resilient food systems can be during challenges like this. We certainly have seen how certain vulnerabilities are exposed and how disruption can affect many of us. But we've also seen the resilience of food systems, and that certainly is encouraging going forward. That also should remind us that there's a lot of work yet to do with or without the pandemic around safe food, food security, and other aspects of food systems. And so there's an element of maintaining vigilance as we go through this and certainly come out the backside.
Well, John, I think that's a great kind of transition to this next topic I want to touch on, which is the pandemic has created many short-term challenges for all companies. And I would love to hear a little bit how you have helped customers, specifically along the food chain, keep an eye on those long-term challenges while addressing the immediate needs. I think it's easy for people to go into panic mode and address only what's happening right now, but obviously there's a need to keep an eye on the ball for the long term to ensure progress is not being sacrificed and innovation maintains for the long term.
So I'll mention a couple and then turn it back over to my colleagues, because I think we have some interesting vantage points here on this. This has certainly reminded us from just a macroeconomic perspective how significant food service, hospitality, food, and ag is to the United States GDP, but really to major producing countries around the world. And that's where I mentioned before the resiliency, how things have kind of flexed and moved and adapted along with consumer requirements. So that's one element where we have to help our customers and have helped our customers manage those shifts in demand and intensity, where food service may have been hurt. Food retail or grocery stores certainly were increasing or experiencing increased traffic and demand. Food and beverage, obviously, same kind of thing. And then I think there was already a trend towards consumers demanding greater transparency around food safety, around ingredients, around ethical treatment of animals, around all aspects of transportation and logistics. And we think that that's not going to slow. It's actually going to increase going through this, and we will have increasingly educated and attentive consumers that are demanding more and more information and insights.
Awesome.
I'll bring a sustainability angle on this too. It's interesting on many levels to think back to January of this year, right? And what we were thinking about, what our minds were focused on, and before COVID had hit. The World Economic Forum releases a list every year of the top 10 risks by likelihood and the top 10 risks by impact. And interestingly, infectious disease didn't even make the top 10 list for likelihood and was number 10 on the list for impact. And above infectious disease, like COVID, on both lists were many, many sustainability issues, everything from the water crisis that is already upon us to climate change, extreme weather events, biodiversity loss. And so, it's hard to kind of maintain personal resilience and corporate resilience and government resilience around these challenges that are those longer term challenges when there's something very immediate like COVID. I think that it's critical that we do so, though, because all of these challenges are actually interrelated. Part of what drives the water crisis, so for those of you who are unaware of this, by 2030, there will be a 40% gap between the water that we need in the world and the water that we have available to use. More recent estimates make that 56%. There are almost 1 billion people who don't have access to water today. There are 1 million people in California alone who don't have access to clean, safe drinking water at home. And a lot of that is driven just by population growth, right? As the population grows, people need more food to eat. People need more energy to use for all sorts of reasons. The two biggest industries in terms of water use are energy and food. And so all of these issues are interrelated. You add COVID to that, you add infectious disease to that, that's impacted by the way that we grow our food. The ability to respond to COVID is impacted by our access to clean, safe, healthy water, right? You can't wash your hands effectively if you don't have clean, safe water to wash your hands with. And so all of these issues are interrelated, and it's very easy to kind of hop, skip, and jump between them. But we really need to start thinking more systematically about how we are thoughtful about the trade-offs in any decision that we're making that impacts water, energy, climate, public health, and pay more attention to unintended consequences of the decisions that we make.
Thank you for adding that in, Meredith. And I know as the global economy begins to reopen, maintaining safe, clean, and healthy operations is a priority. And you touched on especially, clean drinking water and water for washing hands and things like that. It needs to be a visible priority. Can you talk a little bit about what Ecolab has developed in terms of programming to maintain those standards as we move forward in the reopening of the economy and operations?
Sure. So I'll start just with the water piece. What Ecolab does within our customers from a water management perspective is we help them use less water to create the same production, and we also help maintain clean, safe, healthy environments, both within the kind of surfaces and the broader environment, as well as within your water systems. The good news is that generally when an operation is saving water, they tend also to be saving energy, because it takes a lot of energy to heat that water. It takes a lot of energy to move that water around. A lot of times when you're thinking about maintaining food safety within an operation, it's really critical to be using hot water for a lot of applications, which takes the most energy. A lot of time, the energy that is being used in the heating of that water is you're using a boiler. That boiler is using natural gas. So it's not just about purchasing renewable electricity. It's about how do you actually use less energy in the first place, so that you can reduce your greenhouse gas emissions, reduce your energy use. And there are a lot of things that you can do within an operation that reduce your water and your energy use at the same time, and then therefore reduce your greenhouse gas emissions as well. Ruth, I think you had a couple thoughts just more on the food safety side.
Yeah, thank you, Meredith. Water certainly is important to provide facilities and those along the food supply chain with the ability to clean and sanitize appropriately. I mean, there certainly are operations that operate in dry environments, but the majority who are doing wet cleaning need clean water to do that. And that is so vital for ensuring that the equipment the next day, be it in a production facility or in a restaurant when they start up preparing food, is clean and sanitary, so that the food that's produced on this equipment is free from contaminants that might come in from the environment. So there definitely is a nexus here that we need to make sure that we're stewards of water, but that we're also available or able to have the right kinds of water, where we need it. And frankly, the crises that exist around the world, are somewhat alarming from a potential impact on overall food safety as well. So it definitely needs to be a very broad look when we think about water, because it certainly does have impacts related directly to food safety and certainly more broadly to public health as well.
Thank you both, Meredith and Ruth, for those thoughts on that. We're going to move on to a little bit more on water and supply chain, as there is a clear connection between those two, and not only in terms of growing, manufacturing, the preparing of food, but also ensuring we're following the latest food safety and public health protocols. I know you talked a little about it's hard to wash your hands or keep the environment clean without using water. And I would love to hear a little bit more about how Ecolab is continuing to help its customers reduce their water use during the pandemic. Meredith, I'll kick this one over to you.
There I am. Yeah, so yes, an interesting thing to think about. So there are a number of ways to think about water use. When you think about water use, it's actually industry only uses about 20% of global freshwater today. 10% is used by residential, and then the remaining is used by agriculture. And so we do a lot of work within our customer operations to help them use less water, both for the sake of water scarcity globally, but also because we want our customers' operations to be able to operate under any circumstances, right? So it goes back to what John was talking about with regards to resilience, business resilience, making sure that if there is a lack of water, our customers can still operate. An example of one technology that we use is called 3D TRASAR. And by using 3D TRASAR, we can basically in real time understand the quality of the water that's being used throughout, let's say, a boiler system. And we can measure and impact that water quality along the way so that we can reuse water within the system over and over and over again. So you don't have to reheat that water, you don't have to dump that water as frequently. And so that makes an operation more resilient to challenges with water. If you take that more broadly, so that's within a customer's operations, there is this bigger question of what corporations can be doing to impact water scarcity and water availability more broadly. So we were co-founders of the Water Resilience Coalition this year, which we launched in March along with 6 other major multinational companies. And the goal is really to get after the global water crisis in a bigger way. When COVID hit, there was certainly a question as to, does it make sense to continue to launch at this time? And all of the co-founding companies agreed that we can't wait for some perfect time when the world can, single-mindedly focus on water together. We need to move now because the clock is ticking, and unfortunately, water is becoming more and more scarce. So we have all come together and said that we will be net positive water impacts in at-risk basins by 2050 and get halfway there by 2030. Which means basically that all of the companies that join this coalition want to be having a positive impact on the watersheds we're a part of, rather than adding to the stress of those watersheds. And so we're now up to 17 companies and growing. And so we hope that both by getting our own operations in perfect running order and meeting that pledge on our own as Ecolab, as well as helping our customers meet ambitious sustainability goals, both on water and energy. And then by taking collective action as a coalition to, within our operations, have this impact, as well as working together to fund and invest in nature-based solutions in at-risk watersheds that help replenish water in places where we're operating, that we can have a greater and greater impact, not only on our customers' operations, but also on the broader issue as a whole. Recently, we announced a partnership with an organization called water.org. And we're going to be bringing clean, safe drinking water to 100,000 people in India as part of that partnership. And that is part of our way of fulfilling our commitment to meeting that goal of being net water positive by 2050 and getting halfway there by 2030. Another critical piece is that even though industry alone only impacts 20% of the world's fresh water, if you expand that to look at our supply chains, right, all of a sudden you start including agriculture, which is the biggest water user within our scope of impact. So we have a number of apparel companies that are part of the coalition. We have, we're bringing in companies that are in food and beverage. We've got a number of beverage manufacturers that are in the coalition. And so you start being able to impact that 80% or 70% of water use that's used by agriculture through supply chains. And how can we work with supply chains in more collaborative ways to be using water more smartly and more broadly. And a lot of those same companies have also signed on to the 1.5 degrees Celsius pledge, which is kind of the climate pledge nowadays. That's the goal is to be net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 and get halfway there by 2030. And a lot of the actions that companies will take to meet the climate pledge will also help them meet the water pledge. And a lot of the actions you'll take to meet the water pledge will also help meet the climate pledge. And so I think there's a lot of good news in that despite COVID being an extremely significant distraction for companies in this year, we're continuing to see corporate action stepping up, making more firm commitments, and then seeing the action on the back end of those commitments as well. So as much as I spend a lot of my days talking about various crises, whether it be COVID or climate or water, I think the good news is that at least what I'm seeing right now is that companies haven't taken their eye off the ball on the sustainability front, despite the urgency of COVID.
Meredith, thank you so much for covering a lot of ground there.
Sorry, little rambling.
Before I ask a follow-up question on this, I do want to remind everyone watching at home that please do use the Q&A chat to ask any questions to this panel. They are happy to answer questions, so please do use that. And in this vein of water scarcity, and I really appreciate you talking about how interconnected all of the different industries and systems really are. It is not just you are on one side of the coin. Everything really does have a strong through line. I know you at Ecolab have a number of solutions and programs. You touched on a few of them, but I would love to have you share a little bit more about some of those that you're currently using and upcoming ones that are demonstrating some of the solutions for water scarcity.
The question is with regard to specific solutions in water savings?
Water scarcity. So I know you guys have done work with Kraft Heinz and Brazil. So just wondering if you'd share some of that awesome work you're doing in those.
Yeah, I think maybe one thing that's educational and instructive for all of us to keep our minds on, and I'll touch on a little bit more when we get into diversity and inclusion. From an economic inclusion perspective, these finite resources, and Meredith covered some, and there are many that we could talk about today, whether it be water, whether it be energy, other things, they typically are most scarce in the areas that need them most, and the areas that are most impoverished, that perhaps lack other necessary resources in order to be productive. And so the impact, I would say, is asymmetrical, and it's pretty profound in certain parts of the world. Certainly that's true with climate change. That's true with scarcity to resources like water and energy, as I mentioned. And I think there we don't have the magic wand to solve all of that. What we do have is the ability to help customers who are integral parts of maturation of society, meaning the advancement of society and the advancement of inclusion from an economic and quality of life perspective, help those companies be as efficient as possible with these finite resources and help them grow and develop and serve people and communities there in a sustainable way. And sustainable both from the environmental sense, but also in terms of being productive, long-lasting employers in the area. So I think we need to keep in mind that it's not a singular issue, it's not a singular resource, and the impact can be quite profound in certain parts of the world, even certain parts of the country. And that's why we're very interested in working on sustainability, because we see sustainability through a holistic lens. It's not just about environmental sustainability, it's also about economic sustainability and participation, growing demographics, quality of life, access to goods and services, and access to finite resources.
Yeah, there's actually, so I can give you a couple examples kind of within customer plants. I think you mentioned a couple. So we partnered with Kraft Heinz California plant to help them ensure clean operations that also drove more efficient resource use. And in general, that's kind of how we end up operating, right? We'll go in, and a lot of times the the company's initial goal is not, sustainability savings, although more and more so they are coming to us for that. But they're looking for more efficient resource use from a savings perspective. And so we were able to use data collection to analyze a plant's cleaning and sanitizing performance and recommend corrective actions. We were able to fix a leak in the heat exchanger valve, reducing wash times and reducing chemical use. And so, sometimes it can be as simple as using, well, and this is not simple, but more and more we're bringing digital solutions to identifying operational issues that otherwise you wouldn't have known existed, like finding a leak in a heat exchanger valve. And you'd be surprised how much those actions, those corrective actions, can save both in terms of water and energy, and sometimes even increase production. We also partnered with a Brazil-based Nestle facility to deliver energy savings while reducing water consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. We implemented a solution that reused condensate organic water generated in the production of milk and cooling towers, and saved a ton of water and energy as well. But I'd say that it's not just about the on-site solutions, it is also about those off-site solutions. And there's a surprising amount of innovation that is happening right now with regards to water, even off premises, right? So when you think about different ways of improving the water systems within a watershed, we mentioned the water.org partnership. Their innovation, if you will, is their business model or their impact model. So what they do is they work with microfinance institutions that already exist and already provide microfinance loans in countries where those are needed. And they provide training and support for those microfinance institutions to actually offer water loans. Now, normally a microfinance institution would not offer a water loan because they don't think of water as being revenue generating. But we know that water actually is revenue generating in a number of ways. For individuals and families, the way it's revenue generating is that it prevents people in the family from walking, 7 hours a day to go fetch water, and they can use those hours differently. And so they end up getting a 99% payback rate on those water loans. And so by leveraging microfinance and that innovation, you end up making every dollar that is donated to water.org multiplies because it attracts commercial capital to these loans as well. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that's happening in the nonprofit space, that's happening in nature-based solutions to replenish water in watersheds, as well as the innovation that we and a lot of very cool startups are bringing to the table within company operations to reduce water use on that end. Also in the agricultural space, although we don't have as close of ties there from a business perspective.
Awesome. Thank you so much for highlighting some of those. And we did have a question come in asking, saying thank you for your wealth of information. Could you please share again the name of the water initiative founded by Ecolab with 17 other companies for the public to know?
Sure, it is the Water Resilience Coalition, and if you Google it, it will certainly pop up. I hope that is still the case. It's housed within the UN Global Compact CEO Water Mandate, so it's on the UN website. And you can see the full list of 17 companies. Hopefully I quoted that correctly. We're adding new ones every day. I won't attempt to name them all right now because certainly I'll forget one. But if you go to the website, you'll find it there. We're also working with a number of NGO partnerships through the Water Resilience Coalition. I would encourage anyone who is on the call and works at a company that has questions about the coalition to feel free to reach out to me, and I can connect you to the right people at the UN.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I know we only have about 5 minutes left. Time flies when you're having fun. But I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to talk a little bit about the work in the DE&I space with your supply chain that you're doing. And if you have time as well, want to address some of the things coming down the future for supply chains and those trends and challenges that you see impacting your work.
Maybe if I could, because I would like to touch on the end of the value chain, meaning where food gets consumed. And that requires consumers to be confident and consumers to feel safe. We all are hopeful, if not impatient, for slices of normal to come back into our lives. And they will come back to our lives. And Ruth spoke a little bit earlier about the need to remain vigilant about food safety. We are have introduced, some of you may have seen it, Ecolab Science Certified. And that is really about helping the food service industry to begin with, but really all public spaces, food service areas, food prep areas, anywhere where food is consumed. We want consumers, customers of our customers, to feel confident, to feel safe, to see safe, to experience safe. And that will help key elements of the industry, of the food industry writ large, get back up on its feet and help our economies get back up and running. But also, as consumers ourselves on this call, help us feel safe, let's say, getting back aspects of our life that we miss right now. And so that's one that maybe Ruth wants to add a little bit to that and what's behind that. But that's one where we saw the need, and it was a key learning throughout the COVID experience, that this is not just about helping our customers through this period of crisis and for ourselves surviving it. It's about helping our customers enter that next chapter post-pandemic and doing so successfully. And that requires reaching all the way to the consumer.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. You know, the reality is we certainly are living through this pandemic, and we will live through it. There's a post-pandemic we will get to. But we will continue to be facing various public health risks, some specific related to food safety. You know, that's you know, we have history of that, and it will go on into the future as well. So maintaining this really strong focus and grounding in science to enable focus on those risks that are most relevant is going to be really key. But, you know, along with that, what our Ecolab Science Certified program helps to verify is that, say, frontline workers who are really, in essence, helping best keep our food safe, that's served to us, that we purchase, and so on, that they're continuously trained in those right kinds of areas, and we make sure that they are. It also allows us to think about being conscious of that entire food system, you know, from way back on the farm through to manufacturing, retail, restaurant, food service, and then to us as consumers as well, to make sure that you know, the right kinds of risks are identified and then managed appropriately. You know, and we can help at many points along that chain.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ruth. All right. I don't see any more questions coming in, but if there are other comments you guys want to talk about, any of that DE&I work or other initiatives you have, you can kind of get the last 2 minutes for final comments, and then we can wrap it up.
Thanks for that. I will jump on the diversity, equity, inclusion piece because it's something that's so important to us as a corporate citizen, to us as an employer, and to us as a key member of society overall. We talk a lot about sustainability. You really can't have sustainability without true economic inclusion. And so that has become something that we're very serious about. And we have a strong supplier diversity initiative that we have kicked off. I would like to kind of reframe that around partnerships as well. We think that we have an opportunity to expand the base of suppliers, diverse women and minority-owned suppliers with whom we do business, meaning have more of them that provide us with goods and services, and we're actively working on that. We also have an appetite for and a willingness to invest in those, either through capabilities, through access to capital, other kinds of things, but ways to grow, help them grow their business and grow with us to become integral parts of Ecolab and how we do our work. And we think that that has a virtuous impact on the economy, on the community locally, talent attraction, employee engagement. And so it's something that we're working on diligently, and we think it fits into our holistic approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're pretty encouraged about it and excited about it.
Well, that's wonderful news, and I commend you for that initiative as really getting minority-owned suppliers into the and doing business with them is the key way to help grow their businesses and get them to have more share of the market. So that is awesome news and something we at Grow North are happy to support as well. We had our minority trade show event on Friday with buyers from across the region with the same goal and hope, and that bridging some of those relationships and getting those doors open allows those minority-owned companies to really grow their business and have a stronger foothold in our society and advance their businesses. So awesome work. All right, well, we are going to wrap it up here. A huge thanks to John, Meredith, and Ruth for joining us today and sharing about all the important work for Ecolab.